Results of the latest excavation season in Merenptah, Egypt, have been announced. Among their highlights is a tomb with coral walls and floors and intact burials with rich grave goods excavated by a team from the Polish Center of Mediterranean Archaeology. Merenptah is located in the eastern desert on the Red Sea coast. This port city, founded in the 3rd century before Christ by Ptolemy II, has been explored by a Polish-American expedition from the Polish Center of Mediterranean Archaeology at the University of Warsaw and the University of Delaware since 2008. This new discovery is the first such an explicit example of social differentiation in a very poorly recognized phase of the city's occupation, that is, in the 4th, 5th centuries. The equipment and the form of the burials are unique in the whole of eastern Egypt, says expedition co-director Dr. Mariusz Gwiazda of PCMAUW. The goal of the Polish team's current work at the necropolis is to study the community living in the eastern desert after the Roman period, 4th, 6th century. Researchers are interested in the diversity of burial customs and are also planning paleoanthropological analyses in this period. Merenptah was ruled by the Blemmyes, a nomadic people inhabiting the eastern desert from the present-day Egyptian-Sudanese border to Ethiopia. Although Merenptah was no longer under Roman control at that time, the lucrative long-distance trade that contributed to the establishment and growth of the port still continued. Its routes connected the Indian Ocean, East Africa, and Byzantium. Previous research has focused on the origins of the city and the Roman period. This work is being continued by a team led by Professor Stephen E. Sidebotham. The investigated tomb is one of several similar above-ground structures built on a hill near the main road to the city. It is a rectangular room, almost 5 meters long. The floor, made of selected, smooth, white corals, is a remarkable feature. Another type of coral mixed with mud was used to plaster the walls. Inside the tomb, communal burials and associated rich equipment were discovered. The latter included over 700 beads, with some specimens imported from southern Asia, several silver rings and earrings, and ivory bracelets. Remains associated with burial rites were also encountered, including wine amphorae and ceramic water bottles. Further elements of these rituals were offerings in incense burners and bowls. The most impressive of such censers, made of stone, had a decoration in the form of a lion's head. The burials themselves were placed in stone boxes constructed by the walls of the tomb. The bodies were laid in a closely contracted position and were presumably tied up to save space. The use of plaster with corals as a building material is unique in the architecture of this period and was recorded for the first time at Merenptah, notes the archaeologist. He also points out that the selection of suitable coral fragments must have been time-consuming, which must have been reflected in a high cost of constructing the tomb. This, in turn, indicates that the structure was intended for people of high social status, most likely members of the local elite, adds Dr. Gwiazda. The discovery opens a new chapter in the study of burial customs of eastern desert, inhabitants and population diversity of the region at the end of antiquity. The research at Merenptah is conducted in collaboration with the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities with the support of its Qusair branch. Art in Ancient Egypt. Ancient Egyptian art has survived for over 5,000 years and continues to fascinate people from all over the world. In ancient Egypt, art was magical. Whether in the form of painting, sculpture, carving, or script, art had the power to maintain universal order and grant immortal life by appealing to various gods to act on behalf of people, both in life and in death. Art was everywhere. From 4,500 before Christ, Egypt's symbolic art was an essential part of public buildings, such as temples and palaces. Widely understood, symbols formed the basis of this art, as it was believed these offered protection from evil influences in this life and the next. It is no surprise, then, that art was also a crucial inclusion in the elaborate tombs that housed the mummified remains of people. Tomb art was considered the point of contact between the land of the living and the land of the dead. If certain formulas for the creation of art were followed and the right gods supplicated, all Egyptians, from the wealthy to the poor, could look forward to completing their earthly life, successfully navigating the dangerous underworld and traversing to the blessed eternal afterlife. Egyptian tombs were like secret art galleries that were never meant to be viewed. Instead, these amazing examples of artistic craftsmanship spoke only to an elite group of visitors, the gods. Artistic style. When representing human figures in a piece of tomb art, it was important to show as much of the body to the gods as possible. That is why both frontal and profile views of a body were integrated into one figure. It wasn't meant to be naturalistic. It was intended to serve as a sign that stood for human. This method helped the gods recognize the person and also made the figure a recipient for ritual activity. Kings were portrayed larger than life to symbolize the ruler's godlike powers and therefore importance in the afterlife. Similarly, tomb owners, as the most important subject of the design in their tomb, were depicted on a grand scale. In contrast, wives and children, servants and animals were drawn smaller, indicating their lesser importance. Color. Color was seen as a kind of universal language that was used to communicate significant meaning to the Egyptian gods. Certain colors were imbued with specific powers or attributes that were linked to various gods. As a result, great power could be contained within an object if it was made or painted in meaningful colors. For example, green and blue were the colors of plants, water and sky, and symbolized fertility and prosperity. Gold was the color of the sun and of the god's kin and was linked to immortality. Hieroglyphs, the most direct way that a tomb owner could communicate with the gods, was through the elaborate Egyptian hieroglyph system. These pictograms performed a very specific function to ensure certain gods were supplicated and rituals performed for all eternity. Hieroglyphs were written in both columns and rows and could be read from either the left or the right, depending on the design of the text. In November last year, scientists announced that they had finally solved the mystery of King Tutankhamun's death after 3,300 years. The boy king, they claimed, died after being struck by a speeding chariot. However, a new virtual autopsy of the world-famous pharaoh has revealed that serious genetic physical impairments would have made riding a chariot impossible. According to a report in The Independent, the results instead suggest that Tutankhamun succumbed to genetic impairments that were caused by the fact that his parents were brother and sister. Tutankhamun was the 11th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, a period of Egyptian history known as the New Kingdom, which was Egypt's most prosperous time and marked the peak of its power. The king, who began his reign at the tender age of 10, became one of the most famous pharaohs of Egypt following the 1922 discovery of his opulent tomb by Howard Carter, along with his body and spectacular golden mask, and the tales of the supposed curse placed upon his tomb. In February 2010, the results of DNA tests confirmed that he was the son of Akhenaten and Akhenaten's sister and wife. Marriage within family was not uncommon in ancient Egypt and was practiced among royalty as a means of perpetuating the royal lineage. The pharaohs believed they were descended from the gods, and incest was seen as acceptable so as to retain the sacred bloodline. However, what they were unaware of at the time was the severe consequences of family inbreeding. The fact that Tutankhamun's parents had been brother and sister resulted in numerous genetic conditions that the boy king suffered, including a cleft palate, a club foot, feminine hips, and a severe overbite. Mystery has surrounded Tutankhamun ever since his death in 1323 BC, aged 19. Theories have ranged from violent murder to leprosy, and even a snake bite. The most convincing explanation to have emerged was last year's announcement that he had been struck by a chariot. This hypothesis had been supported by substantial evidence, including X-ray and CT scanning technology, which revealed a pattern of injuries down one side of his body. Computer simulations conducted by expert crash investigators showed that Tutankhamun's injuries were consistent with those that would have been sustained in a chariot accident. However, new research based on more than 2,000 computer scans and a genetic analysis of Tutankhamun's family suggests that the boy king could never have ridden in a chariot because of his serious genetic physical impairments, including his severe clubbed foot, which prevented him from standing unaided. This is backed up by the discovery of 130 used walking canes in his tomb. The virtual autopsy revealed that only the fracture in his knee occurred before he died, while fractures in his skull and other parts of his body occurred after the boy king was already dead, leading scientists to believe he may have succumbed to an inherited illness. Professor Albert Zink, head of the Institute for Mummies and Icemen in Italy, said that the young royal's death was most likely caused from him being in a weakened state as a result of genetic impairments inherited from his brother and sister parents. The study also showed that the frail king was afflicted with malaria, which may also have been a serious factor in the cause of death.